Thank you all for joining this session, eRA Commons Interacting with NIH Electronically Post-Submission. My name is Jade Blevins, Customer Relationship Manager with the eRA Commons team, and I'm your moderator for this 45-minute session. Now I'd like to introduce our presenters for today. Scarlett Gibb, Customer Relationship Manager for the eRA Commons, and Joe Shoemaker, Communication Specialist. The format today includes a short presentation followed by Q&A with our presenters. During the presentation, we have Q&A staff to answer questions in the Q&A box. Let's go ahead and get started. Your first presenter is Joe.
Hey everybody, welcome. This is what we're going to attempt to do is we're going to start with a quick eRA Commons overview. We'll go through various parts of the eRA system and try to end up with, if we're very diligent, with kind of some of the closeout processes. So this kind of overview is taking us through the point of a successful submission and award to your closeout. And we're going to turn it over to Scarlett real quick.
So hi guys, I'm Scarlett Gibb, and I just wanted to remind everybody that we're going to be at a really high level as we fly through these slides, but we're going to try to answer all the questions we can. And if you want to really get and dig into the details, Joe and I both are at the eRA booth, and so you can come over there and ask questions to us through chat there and through Q&A. So let's move on. What does Commons eRA do? Well, it's pretty much the electronic means for you to enter your reports, to look at the status of your applications and your grants. It's where the grantees can see all the information regarding what their applications are doing. And on the other flip side, the federal staff is accessing the same information. It's shared via internal systems through NIH and our partner agencies.
Okay, thank you, Scarlett.
Thank you, Joe.
So one of the things that happens here is when you log into eRA Commons, you're going to get the screen that showed here. And one of the most important aspects, whether you're an actual investigator or if you're one of the research administrators, is going to be the status button that you see there. And that gets you into all the details of both your applications and your awards. Now, currently, eRA Commons has kind of a couple different views depending on the screens that you're on. What you see on this slide is to the left is the PI version of the status screen. And then to the right is what we call a signing official, probably going to be one of your research administrators will have that role, and they'll see a much more robust status screen. And the reason for this is, as a principal investigator, you get access to your stuff. You see your submissions, you see your applications and your awards, but as a signing official who has access to all of the awards and applications and submissions for the institution that they're at, they have several more tools at their fingertips to be able to search through all of that information. So here's a little bit closer look at the PI version of the screen. And what we've done is we've grouped the applications and awards into families. So if you have like a 5-year award, it's going to go through each year, and all of that information will be grouped together. So where the blue bar kind of area is there, you click on that, it'll open up and give you more detailed information. You'll also notice that there is some color coding going on. So you see the green for an awarded application, you might see red if it was not awarded for various reasons, and so forth down there. And you'll see, when you get into it, you'll see those different kinds of views. Now, the SO version, again, looks a little bit more complicated because, again, they're seeing a lot more information across your institution, but they'll have a hyperlink under the grant application ID number column that will take them to more detailed information about that either award or application. Once you get into the details, there's all kinds of information that's going to be available to that. And I won't spend a lot of time on this, but you see that there's all kinds of categories. There's lots of good information. I'll point out a couple that are probably a little more helpful and important, and that is going to be the NIH contacts. These are going to be your grants management specialists or the scientific research officer, depending on where the award is or the application is in the process. But when you have questions and you need help, this should be your first place to go, is to get there, get those names and numbers, call those people, because that's why they're there. They're there to help you and assist you and guide you through the process. Some other things that you're going to find in here is what we call the application image. There'll be a link to that. The application image is basically the final PDF version of your submission, and it will let you look at it, and you're going to want to review that right after you successfully submit to make sure that it's correct. You'll also be able to check and see where your application is going in terms of being reviewed, where it is in the review process. You'll be able to check for your summary statements and scores. If you're new to the process, you'll also be able to verify your new investigator or your early stage investigator status at the time of submission. If you're doing a fellowship or a career grant type application, then your reference letters will be available through the detailed status information screen. And if you're very, very lucky, you will be able to access your notice of award from the detailed status screen as well. And in a minute, Scarlett's going to talk about just-in-time documents to give you more information on that. And there we are. Back to you, Scarlett.
Thank you. Applicants, well, we're talking about just-in-time information, which is information that the NIH would like to see it just in time for award, and does not come in with the application and does not go to review. We like to let applicants know that just because you have a JIT doesn't mean, which is what we call just in time, JIT as affectionately called by us. Just because you have a link for one, it does not mean that you are definitely ready to be awarded. It is asking for extra information, and sometimes that information isn't even really necessary. So it's good to wait for to be reached out to by a grants management specialist or someone asking you for the information. The information includes other support files and things that Joe moved off the screen.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Other support files, other uploads, institutional review boards, and human subjects education if human subjects are involved. One big thing to point out is that the PDPI can submit this information into the just-in-time, but it can only be submitted by the signing official, and there is no delegation for this and no routing. So you need to kind of send an email to your SO to let them know that you've done your due diligence, and everything must be in PDF format. Okay, Joe. This is our new just-in-time screen. It's pretty like our new screens, and all screens will be eventually, as we are in the process of moving to a much better format and a user-friendly format. Just one of the things we're pointing out here is you get a JIT, you get a JIT, you get a just-in-time link, you get a just-in-time link. Everybody gets a just-in-time link. It comes out unless you were not scored. As long as you received a score, that link will appear. And we also have the difference here between the SO and the PI, which now is the same. So isn't that great? It's all really pretty. It shows you how you can go in and upload documents. Those are the bottom three things down there. And that's pretty much the screen. And I think we're going to head into personal profile.
All right.
Joe?
Thank you, Scarlett. So another aspect of Commons that you'll find, and it's back on that original login screen. I'm not going to go all the way back to that, but there is a link for your personal profile. Personal profile is a little page inside the system that's all about you. And it's really important that you keep this information up to date and that it's accurate. Things in there are your name, of course, and your demographics. Now, this is particularly important for trainees for their reporting, that we have all that information. It's also really important for NIH to be able to track how everybody is doing in terms of their diversity requirements. But other things that are important are things like your employment history, and this is important for conflict of interest reporting. Your education is super important if you're a new stage investigator or early stage investigator. That has to be up to date and accurate if you want to be eligible for those options. Also, it's a great repository for all your reference letters. So again, if you're doing fellowship type grants and career type grants, you'll be able to see who has submitted reference letters and for what opportunities and when. Then there's also direct access to all of your publications, which again are going to be very important when it comes down to reporting. So it's important that you keep that up to date. And the last bullet there is that we can't change the stuff on your personal profile. That is your data, that is your information. There is a delegation, which Scarlett's going to talk about delegations in a few minutes, that can be given out to have people update that for you. But at NIH, we can't do that for you. So here's a little bit what it looks like. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but you'll see some information there. And the tiles that you see in the center that are kind of the light blue, name and ID, demographics, and so forth, by clicking on the edit button, those will expand and you'll be able to go in there and update all that information. Again, the important ones are going to be your early stage and new investigator statuses. And if you are a reviewer for NIH, your continuous submission eligibility will also be able to be found there. And there's a lot that goes into that, so we won't spend too much time on that. But just know that this is one place that you can check those type of aspects of your account. One of the things that people have kind of a little frustration with is that you have to fill out all the required fields in your personal profile. And the system is really interactive and dynamic in that it will show you what is missing with color coding and icons like red X icons versus check marks. Because we do this because it's really important that all that information is filled out. And what happens is if you're filling all this out and then you leave the page and haven't filled out all the required information, then when you come back, everything gets wiped out and you're going to have to start over. So make sure you go through and get everything done as much as possible that is required. Even if you have to go back and change it later, then at least you can save all that information and keep going without having to go back and redo stuff. There is another aspect to all this, and that's on the personal profile, and it is a link to the ORCID ID. If you haven't heard of this, this is the Open Researcher and Contributor ID system. This is a way of being able to link all of your research awards and grants together and across multiple federal agencies, so that if you don't have an ORCID ID, you come to your personal profile, the link is right there. It only takes a few minutes. It doesn't cost anything, but you're going to want that going forward, and it's even becoming required for some award types. I think that's, yeah, sorry, all of a sudden my thing is not advancing.
I'm going to take this opportunity to let somebody answer a question. We had one about the signing officials, and do they need to submit FRPPRs after the PI has filled in the required information for both SNAP and non-SNAP awards?
The answer to that is yes, they do.
I thought so. They've been having some difficulty with that lately, so I would suggest you come to the eRA booth and we can talk through some more of that.
I also saw a comment about the slides being a little different, and Joe and I did make some adjustments and some changes for new system behavior, and we will be posting the new slide set at the eRA booth after this presentation.
Yes, I'll try to get those up before I sign off for the evening tonight, or if not, they'll be up there. It'll be into the download section tomorrow morning.
Thank you, Board.
Right. Looks like you got yourself forwarded, Joe, so I'll let you keep going.
Okay. All right. This is the early extension, early stage investigator extension process. This is done through the personal profile. It's updated there. Just want to really make you aware, the biggest thing about this is it's under your education tile. So you'll see right there at the top of the image to the right, it says education. You're going to need to open that up and click the edit button. And when you do that, the circled ESI extension request button will be available. You can click on that. I don't know. Yes, there's various things in here that you can fill out, but there's a whole variety of reasons that you can request your early stage investigator status to be extended. Child care and childbirth is a very common one, but you fill this out, you click the save and submit button at the bottom, and all of that information gets forwarded to the committee that reviews these, and then we'll respond to those accordingly. And they do that as a kind of a case-by-case basis. But they're very, very nice about it, and it works quite well in getting your ESI status extended. We good, Jade? Anything else? So I'll move on.
Yeah,
No.
we have one question about going through the two-factor authentication process, but I don't.
I would
talk about
appreciate
that now.
we can
Yeah.
talk about that at the booth, I think, because we
Yeah.
just really don't have the time today to discuss that, but I'd be glad to address any issues. And I'm sure Jade would too at the booth.
Yes, absolutely. We'll
Okay.
discuss that. We can discuss that there.
All right, thank you. The institutional profile is parallel in concept to the personal profile, but it's about, you guessed it, your institution. So it has a lot of information in there about your organization. And what's important on this is, while you can see your institution's you can see your institution's profile, only somebody with a signing official role can edit the information on that page. And okay, I have no idea why that just did that. I apologize, people. I'm crashing. Okay. For some reason, it stopped sharing. My whole PowerPoint crashed.
Oh, wow.
That's why I gave it to you, Scarlett.
I actually do have it up and running on my other screen.
You know what's happening? This is a brand new laptop, and it's going through an update.
Oh, we may lose you all together, Joe, for a second then. Well, your audience totally understands and says that it happens to all of us. So
yeah, but I feel so stupid.
Is mine up and running now, or?
We don't see. Have you shared your screen?
No.
Yeah, you need to do that.
Let me see if I can figure out how to do that. Is that?
It should be a big green button right at the bottom of your screen that says share screen.
Big green button.
At the bottom of your Zoom window, like where your chat and everything would be.
Got it. Let me share the presentation. Okay.
I got mine's
How's that?
back up. Okay, you got yours.
Yeah, looks good.
all right.
I can start scrolling through it. And I'm sorry, guys, if I'm not looking at you, but it's on my big monitor, which is above everything else.
Right.
And let's find out where we were.
Around there. Let's see. We have a question about institutional profile. Maybe Joe can answer this. Does it contain the negotiated rate agreement?
It does not.
It does not. Okay. Since that was.
Can you see it? The screen. Can you see where I am right now on my screen?
Yeah, you want to put it into presentation mode. But...
and does not like to be in presentation mode. Okay, took me all the way back. Keep going.
Well, everyone is feeling better that this happens to everyone, even the experienced presenters that you two are. So humanity at its finest.
So there's institutional profiles, and I'm moving on to Commons roles, if that's okay.
Yes.
So basically, Commons roles, I've seen a lot of questions regarding this, and we base the access in Commons on your roles. And so depending on the roles you have, depends on what you can see. And we kind of divide those into scientific and administrative. If you have administrative roles, you can see, you can do institution organizational work, which means that you can see grants and applications across your organization. Whereas if you have a scientific role, what you're seeing belongs to you. And then of course you can delegate to others based on that. And here's a list of our roles. Also, I wanted to point out the link down there is a great go-to guide for finding out what the roles can do. And it's got a lot of information in it. So please utilize that resource if you're interested in what things can be done. The signing official is the like the super powered role where you have the organization's signing authority, and it is a pretty equivalent to the AOR and grants.gov. They can be different people, they can be the same people, but it's what you assign to them, and they have very similar responsibilities. Basically, signing officials and account administrators have the responsibility to set up accounts. And for scientific roles, we ask that the user only have one role and they affiliate their organizations or organizations affiliate that one particular account to their organization. And we ask that people try to not create duplicates. And this is becoming even more and more important as we move to two-factor authentication. The good news is as we move to two-factor authentication in the near future, we're going to stop worrying about signing officials and scientists being on the same account. And we're also going to have one account for everybody. But right now, for now, we're still going to ask if you have a signing official account and a principal investigator account. Those live in different accounts. Administrators should always check to see if the user already has a scientific role, and if they do, they should affiliate. Delegations. So with all of great power comes delegation needs. So we found that for progress reports and doing X-Train, looking at people's applications and status results, personal profile, and etc., there is a need to delegate those to your colleagues and assistants. And this is our delegation chart. I think it's really well defined, and it's good to read through this because it tells you who can do what and where, and who can do the delegations for you. And I'm going to hand this over to Joe to do no cost extensions.
And I'll see if I cannot crash the system this time.
Please.
So another aspect of the eRA Common system is you have access to lots of different kind of subcomponents, and that's kind of highlighted in the image there to the left. And one of those is prior approval. Now, on prior approval, there's 3 or 4 different types of things that fall under a prior approval kind of concept, but one of those is a no-cost extension. The no-cost extension is basically asking to be able to extend your project period without asking for additional money. And that can be accessed through eRA Commons at different times. So we can go to the next slide, I think, Scarlett. Thank you. So the first slide that we just had up was what the principal investigator might see. And on the signing official side, you're going to see in the status results an extension link. This will show up when I believe it's 90 days from the project period end date. So from 90 days out of the project period end date, you can say, okay, I want to extend the project up to 12 months. And you would go in and request, the SO would go in and request that extension based on your needs. And it's kind of a one-time scenario when you get to that 90 days. If you extend it, that 90 days at that, or at that 90-day marker for anywhere from 1 to 12 months, you're not going to be able to extend it again through that extension link. It's not going to show up. Once that link has been used, or once any no-cost extension has been activated, the extension link does not show up. So if we go one more, I think this is what the form looks like. It's really, really simple. You go in, you select the number of months, hit extend the period, project date, recalculates everything. It notifies the awarding IC, grants management person that you've done this. And this all comes under a special authority that is granted to NIH for this process. And so when you can do the prior approval, as we said, it was 90 days to the project end date. And you can do it with approval if you're not under what's called the expanded authority, which is kind of the automatic 90 process when you're within 90 days. Or if the project end date has expired, but you haven't closed out the award yet, you'll need to do it through the interface and not through that link, because the link will not be available at that point. So there are a variety of scenarios through this, but it's basically just going to be asking for that extended time. What we've been seeing is that a lot of people are extending their projects in the middle of their whole award period, their grant period. So let's say in this example, at the end of year 2, you want to go ahead and extend your project for year 2 to make it actually a whole nother year. If you do that then through the interface in Commons, when you get to that 90-day end of project period, the link is not going to appear. And you'll have to contact the awarding IC to see if you can go ahead and extend again. And so it's basically you have kind of one get out of jail free card, one I want to extend my grant period opportunity. And once you've used that, it's not going to be available again. Yeah, we can go to the next one. Another scenario that you're going to find in Commons is going to be admin supplements. Now, these are a little bit different. And basically here, what you're doing is instead of asking for more time, you're going to ask for more money. And it might be a variety of reasons why this might come about. Something changes. We've had some cases where a virus has gotten into an animal population and kind of wiped out their study animals and needed to be redone and so forth. But admin supplements can be done in 3 different ways. You can go to Assist, which is our kind of online version of all this, and you can put in the information for your award and it will come up and start to fill out some of the information. You can use it in Assist with what's called your federal ID number. And that's the beauty that will go ahead and be able to pull data from the database and pre-fill a lot of your information. There is also the admin sup interface inside Commons that will start the process off, and that also gets you some pre-populated information. But then you're going to come into Assist and complete the process there. So that's really about it for admin subs. Back to Scarlett.
Okay, now we're headed into the wonderful world of research performance progress reports, or as we call it, the Rppr. Basically, this is a federally mandated format to report your performance progress. And we have many areas and pretty much mandated areas to fill out. So the initiation of the Rppr is done by the principal investigator or their assistant that has been delegated with the Rppr delegation, progress report delegation. These are, the annual has the sections A through H. H is only for non-SNAP, which is the more complicated. SNAP is simplified non-competing application process. So the more complicated ones will require a budget. The complicated ones will require a budget. And then sections A through I you have for the interim and final on the right-hand side there. And you can see there is no budget involved in that. Those are for the interim and the final ones. Please watch for character limits in your data entry fields. Ensure that your uploads are in PDF format again, and make sure that your uploads are the right thing and not somebody's wedding invitation, which I actually got one time. And check those over. And when completing data tables, remember to click Add New. The good news is we are looking at updating these to the new interfaces, and that Add New confusion is going to change, and you're going to see it's going to be a lot prettier and a lot nicer and more user-friendly. And I can't wait, and I think you guys will be excited by it. Submitting progress reports with budgets. We have available both the R&R budget and the PHS 398 budgets for those that are requiring budgets. If presented with an option in the budget forms, then you should use the option that the application used when you submitted it. If you have questions about which one to use, please contact your grants management staff and they can assist you with that. The human subject system is an electronic system to manage the human subjects and clinical trials information. One of the places you can access that is through the Rppr when you're getting ready to submit your progress reports. Right now, it's allowing principal investigators and the signing officials to access and update the human subjects and clinical trial data associated with their grants. When you see that, the way you will access it through the Rppr is through the section G4B. So you will find that in section G, down to number 4 and B. And that's where the inclusion data link will be, and you will see it as you see in this screenshot. Multi-year Rpprs. Now, these are the most fun Rpprs that we have on our docket. These are where, and I'm explaining this because quite often it gets confusing. We do fund almost all of our grants for more than 1 year, but not at a time. In the multi-years, your budgets and your project periods will be equal. So if your budget period is past more than 1 year, then it'll equal to the same as your project period. So you can go from 2012 to 2015, and your budget periods will also be 2012 to 2015. It makes it a little bit more difficult to put a progress report on each one of them because it's one grant. So you'll see the year 01 at the end, even though you are getting funding for 3 years. So we put it all in one little space, and it is shown under the status. So you will see multi-year progress reports will be reported under status and not under the Rppr tab at the top. Complex. So complex, or we call multi-project or multi-components. You can see those as all the same. We call it sometimes a component, sometimes we call it a multi-project. Basically, you're adding components to the Rppr. They should match up or be close to matching up to what is on your application. We have started pulling in what has come in from your application and has been funded by the internal system. So you will start seeing those. You can, of course, add them also, and you can remove them when you go to report. So there is an add button that says add component, and it will allow you to add extra components and then add the data therefore. Here are the 3 variations of an Rppr in this format. So you have your annual Rpprs, which appear on your non-competing segments of your grant, and you fill them out prior to the award. Interim Rpprs will show up after your project period has ended and the grant is not in closeout. So if you're looking to have a type 2 and you have not closed, or you have a type 2 that's getting ready to be awarded and your project has not closed, you will have an interim. If your project is gone into our closeout system, then you will have a final Rppr and it will be part of the closeout module. If your project, for whatever reason, goes from closeout back to interim, back to being open again, the final RPPR that you completed will move with it. If you do an interim and you, for whatever reason, do not get the next segment of your project and go into closeout, your interim will go into the final. It's a pretty nifty little auto magical feature we have there. Here's some more scenarios, and pretty much it's telling you that these will be due no later than 120 days from the project period end date. Outcomes is the one section that is added to these, to both the interim and the final RPPRs. We are looking for outcomes, and the big takeaway here is that the information in the outcomes will be publicly available. So it should be written in plain language at a high level and to be shareable. And we have a lot of information on how these outcomes should be done, and this slide covers those. If you submit and then there's more data needed, we have something called a Pram, which is progress report additional material. If you submit with public access publications that are not compliant, it's going to be required that you get them compliant and submit a Pram. If the agency sees something in your report that they want some more information on, they may open up the Pram and ask you to submit more information. Publications, this is just a real quick overview on selecting and deselecting publications for the RPPR submissions and explaining the difference between the gold and silver locks. I'm going to let you guys, because we're running out of time, go ahead and read those slides on your own. Closeout items. Joe.
Well, thank you.
I'm breathing now.
I always leave you with all the heavy lifting. So we're getting to the end of the path, luckily. When you are at the end of your project period and you're ready for closeout, there are 3 reports that are going to be required. You're going to have your final RPPR that Scarlett has already talked about. There'll be the federal financial report that goes over everything that you did with your money. And if your research resulted in something that is going to be or has been patented, you're going to do a final invention statement. And those are going to be the 3 required reports. We will mark your grant as ready for closeout when the project period end date has passed and you have not submitted a type 2 application to go ahead and get another segment. So those are kind of the criteria. Remember, we talked at the beginning that the signing official has a very robust search screen for status of stuff. You'll see that there's a specific screen for closeout, and that you can actually put in a bunch of different parameters as to what you want to look for in terms of your closeout of grants. And we'll go to the next one. Thank you. Very, very similar to what Scarlett was talking about with the Pram. When we're doing final reports, there is a final report additional materials request process. It works almost in the exact same manner as what Scarlett had talked about before. If you have applied for a type 2 continuation, then we're going to call it an IRAM because it's going to be the interim report additional materials request. And so those are going to show up in both the PI and the SO status screens. And that brings us to the end. I'm impressed that we got that far, Scarlett.
Good job, y'all.
I am too.
All right. I've got one question here about system reminders. Do we send out system reminders for interim RPPRs?
We do not yet.
Is there a reason for that?
There was a reason. It was never, there was some discussion about how we were going to do that. And so systematically, it was never integrated into the system. We will be looking at that in the very near future. There have actually already been some requirements gathering on those. And it's looking like we will start sending out system reminders for the interims.
Excellent. Thank you. See, I'm just gonna I'm going to ask you a few from the bottom up, because can a PI delegate all access to an assistant?
They
All
can
access?
delegate all the access that is allowed to be delegated. So they can go in and check all their boxes and delegate those to one person or to a group of people. There are a few things that can't be delegated. Routing the Rppr cannot be delegated because there's a sign off in there. And then we honestly actually pull those auditing, have pulled them myself recently several times. And so that sign off is very important for us to have, that the PI has signed off and agreed that they put everything in there that they were supposed to. We can't delegate that. We also have not delegated just-in-time information. That is something that we've been looking into as we move into a new era with some new screens and things. Maybe we can find some resources to do that.
Okay. Is there a way to find the current GMS for an active award if you don't have access to the PI's eRA Commons information? They're looking.
That's
the role
a really
is not listed in Rppr.
Question. Not that I'm aware of. I think we can dig around on that, but I'm not aware of any place where that would be, unless you can look at the notice of award, maybe. But you would still need Commons access for that too, I'm sure.
And Joe, can you remind our audience what the exact name of our booth is? I know it starts with eRA.
Yeah, it's the Electronic Research Administration booth. And when you go to the exhibit hall, it's the very top row, like as if it was from the perspective that they've laid out, furthest away to the right. So I think there's 3 booths at that kind of either first or last row, and we'll look at it, but it's all the way to the right to the top of the screen.
Yeah.
When you go into the exhibit hall.
Yeah. And if you're searching electronic research.
Yeah, Electronic Research Administration.
Excellent. Just we wanted to point some folks to us to get some more detailed information. So I wanted to give them the name correctly.
Yes. And
yep.
I will have this updated presentation available at the booth through the downloads documents section, so that people get the freshest of what we have.
The newest of the new.
Jade and I will be there tomorrow. I'm afraid I'm probably not going to make it this evening, but tomorrow.
Yes, tomorrow we will be there as well as a number of our service desk representatives from the eRA Commons service desk. So very knowledgeable folks.
And our cohort, Anastasia Hardison, who is also answering your questions right now in the background.
Exactly.
Which we'd love to throw out thanks to her and Casa McGarst and Chris for helping us from policy answer those questions, that as sometimes we get policy questions, and I will direct, and I'm sure Jade and everybody else will be directing sometimes to policy, because there are questions that we systematically can tell you what can happen, but we can't help you with the policy on that.
Exactly. All right. I'm going to ask you one last question, which I think we went over this, but there was a question about PI submitting the HSS information in assist. They've been delegated. Is it submit authority, or is it a different?
In assist?
The it's a HSS.
So
submission of HSS.
Okay.
Is there a delegation for that?
Yes, if the PI has been delegated submit authority, they can go in and submit that. Yes.
Okay. Wanted to make sure. All right. So I'm going to wrap us up now. Thank you all, presenters and participants, for such an informative session. It's been great. If you have additional questions, please visit our exhibit hall booths, eRA, Electronic Research Administration, for a chat, or you can sign up for a one-on-one opportunity. You can always find contact information in the help section of our grants.nih.gov site. Your feedback is very important, so please take a moment to let us know what you thought by clicking on the session feedback button located with the description and presenters on the auditorium list of sessions. When you are completely done with the seminar, please also complete the overall survey form in the navigation bar at the top of the page. Thank you again, and have a great evening.
Thank you. And
Thanks,
thank you to
guys.
Ryan.
And
Yes,
thank you to our
Ryan, our
ASL
technical.
interpreters as
Yes,
well.
and
Yes.
the interpreters.
Have a good night, all.
All
Have
right.
a good
Yep.
night.
Thanks, guys.